Hello and welcome back to part 14 of our Maya hard surface modeling tutorial, where we make a old sailing ship. Last we left off, we finished up this back section here, and we talked a little about how because the tutorial is kind of stretching on to the 14th part now, we kind of want to change pace a little bit and sort of show you how to make some of the more difficult parts now that the main hull is created, and then let you guys go away and take on the rest for yourself. So this will actually be the last sort of main modeling video for this. There's a fair few bits we could look at, like the wheel back up here and some various different bits and pieces and details to add to the deck. But I think we've sort of given you the tools now throughout this video to go ahead and make a lot of that yourself. We've definitely hit the most complicated parts, which is the actual hull and shape of the ship and the back section itself. I feel like everything else, you guys will be more than well equipped enough now to go ahead and do that yourself. We'll probably do some supplementary videos later on, like on how to make a cannon, and then we can go ahead and stick these in because it seems quite straightforward, but cannons, the actual models, in real life are quite complicated pieces. I think they're originally made out of single bits of cast iron, but they have various different nodules and bits and bobs that come off of them at the back, especially for like the mounting mechanism, and various different pieces like that. And then the actual trailer, I don't know whether that, I don't think that's the official term or the actual term that they come on. Just the wheelbase has some complexity to it, but it's nothing too crazy. So I thought in this video, just to give you the last sort of final bits, really, to add detail to this, we're going to look at the rigging, specifically the rope ship rigging rather than model rigging parts, and I'll show you how to make some of those. There's a few different bits. I forget exactly what all of them are called, but I'll just pull over my PureRef file here. The ones we're going to be looking at, and these are the ones that you see repeated throughout, and they change in scale and size and complexity depending on the ship. We're just going to make them based on the reference, and then we can scale them down to our reference. So if you're not modeling this ship, then just go ahead and do the same. I would say we could go ahead and find, you know, official old reference for the dimensions of these pieces, and I'm sure it does exist out there on forums or various different Wikipedia pages, but to save ourselves all of that headache, we're just going to make it to this to begin with. So you have these ones here, these circular ones, which kind of look like shocked little face emojis. They line like the sides of the ship. They have these rigging here attached to them. You'll see them high up here on the masts, for example. This is a real picture of the HMS Victory in the Portsmouth in the UK. There's also these pulley type ones as well, and you can see they vary from having sort of like a single opening to double opening to triple opening. So, and also these little acorn looking ones, which aren't as common, but at least for the time being we'll make these dead eyes, which is what they're actually called, and show you how to make some of these pulleys as well. And then once you make this single pulley here, it's really easy to make the rest because you kind of just duplicate it out, but I'll show you how to do that. You might have already figured out how to do it in your heads, but we'll do it in today's episode. So to begin with, I'll just put that to the side. We are going to, I'll just put this in the ship group, hide our ship, and then I'm just going to turn the grid back on because I want to be able to see where we're starting from. To begin with, we'll make one of the dead eyes. So we're literally just going to start with a cylinder. Could start with a sphere, but I prefer not to in this case. We'll go with something like 24 divisions maybe. Actually, we could do it with 16. So we need 3 holes. Let's go with 16, right? We don't want to go too high because we are going to have a lot of these once you actually add them all on every single little surface. And what we'll do for scale for this is we'll just scale that in a little bit like this. We're not going to change the rest of the size, just this. We'll scale it down in Y. What we'll then do is go ahead and, sorry, I had soft select on there, add a couple bevels here, something like this, and these also seem to vary in shape and dimension as well. Some of them have a more rounded front, some of them have a flatter front. For the sake of this tutorial, I am going to just give them a more rounded front with a bevel here, or sorry, a flatter front with a bevel there, and then there's also a groove down the middle, which is where our rope goes. So we're going to add a edge loop, and then we're going to bevel that, and just increase that size a bit. We'll then extrude this in, like so. Maybe something like this. Nice deep groove for the ropes to go through. Okay, and then that's our basic shape. And then we now need to add 3 little holes here on the front and back to create our smiley face shape. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to extrude in to give ourselves some more polygons. I'm then going to extrude in again, and this is just to add as like a protective edge. Don't necessarily need to do it, but I like to. And then we're going to select the shapes like this. Okay. We'll then go ahead and extrude and reduce these in scale. Now that might start to look a little funky, but that's okay. Well, what we'll do next is we might have to scale some of these down ourselves manually. Okay, just because the actual extrude function is going to work a bit strange if we don't. And when we come to circularize those faces, it's not going to work too well either. Just to be safe as well, we'll go ahead and select these vertices, the ones we're going to be modifying. And then we'll go ahead and use a tool we haven't used before. I'm just holding down Shift and right click and going to average. I'm pressing G to repeat, and all that's going to do is just even out the spacing on those, just so we can give our circularize the best chance to do this without really having any glitches. You want to try and keep these vertices kind of as even as possible on all sides. So something like this ought to do. Then we'll go ahead and select these guys again. Then we will press circularize. Okay. So again, the scale of these holes varies as well, and the position. I am going to go ahead and put them like so, and then just delete, because we don't need those faces anymore. Okay, and there you go. You can see we have our shape. What I might do is pull these out a little bit. I'll just soft select so that that moves all of these edges, just as a bit more spacing. Okay, and maybe as well I'll increase the size of these holes ever so slightly. Something like this. Okay, and again, I'm not worried about it being perfect. So that's that side. We're now going to go ahead and duplicate this over to the other side. Like always, we don't want to have to be redoing work we've already done. We'll just set the pivot point to the middle. It might already be at the middle, but I'm just paranoid. And then we'll go ahead and merge that. Okay, and then we can delete this edge. Okay, cool. So now we have holes going right through. We're just going to go ahead and bridge these, like so. Okay. Then we can go ahead and I think what we'll do is just give these edges a bit more spacing so they're not so cramped. We don't want that to be too tight up against it, just because when we go to add bevels to these, it's going to create some problems. This topology is not the prettiest, but it really doesn't matter. I'm sure many people in the comments, if you do comment, will disagree. But it's kind of like knowing the rules, right? As long as you're not planning on this deforming or taking this to add like sculpting onto later, it really doesn't matter all that much whether or not you have super clean quads. I would say still keep it as quads. And if you're going to put this on your portfolio, I would say you can only really get away with having less clean topology on the tiniest little parts. Make sure everything else is as clean as possible. Then we'll go ahead and add some bevels to these now. Pretty big edge loops, I think. There we go, perfect. Then let's add some bevels to the rest. I don't want this to have like super hard edges because it is made out of wood after all and exposed to sea air. So something like this will probably do. Oh, missed one. That's okay. Okay, great. And then that is how you make one of those dead eyes. It's really not a very complicated shape. They kind of vary in scale throughout the ship. but you can literally just reuse these. So now that you have one, you can use that for every single one. You know, if you need to have a slightly bigger one, just take it and scale it up. And then you can even, if I enable our reference, you know, I can come to the side view here. And then I can see here that they're all positioned along the side, and I can literally go into wireframe mode and just scale this down till it fits. And you can see, you know, even the ropes kind of line up, because these really, like, these were used just on ships in general of the period. I don't know exactly when they started using them, but they're just on every single nation ships, from military ships to just civil maritime ships, everything. So that all line up quite nicely, and as you can see, they're positioned everywhere, right? Like down here, up here. I don't think so much up here, but you can see the pulleys and stuff right here. So we're going to go ahead and make those next. Okay, let's go ahead and make one of the pulleys. So we'll just name this something like Deadeye underscore 001. So when we duplicate that out, that can go to 002 and so on. We'll go ahead and hide that guy, hide our ref layer again, and we'll start with another cylinder. I'm gonna, with this guy, because of the actual shape, we're going to go with 24 divisions for the time being, because we need to add some inserts on this side. Actually, sorry, ignore me. We're going to start with a cube, just because it's going to be easier to get the shape. So it's kind of just like a rounded cube, really, cuboid, rectangular type shape. And again, the thickness kind of varies. So for the time being, we'll start with the single notch one. We are going to go ahead and add an edge loop in the middle. We'll extrude that out. Then we'll add some bevels on all sides, actually. Kind of like this. And I want to keep the size of the faces here even. And then that's pretty close to the shape that we want. So what I'll do is just go ahead and clean up this topology quickly. And we'll add an extra edge up here as well. Just for the sake of it. Maybe adds a bit of roundness to this as well. They're not perfectly flat really anywhere, except for the sides. Okay, so let's go quickly join all this up. I'm pretty confident you guys could go ahead after following this tutorial, especially if you have some more modeling experience, and make these shapes absolutely no problem. But if you've not done it before, then I think this will definitely help you out a little. Just because it's bugging me, I'm going to go ahead and soften those edges. Okay, I may also edit the edge flow on these, because that's sticking out a little too much. So maybe on this guy as well. Okay, and we'll just straighten that up, just to keep that curve a bit more even. What I'm then going to do is add an extra subdivision. Okay, so we'll just crease those. Okay, and these models can get quite high poly, so we're definitely not making this as a game asset. This is more of like a stay in Maya, or any other like pre-rendered scene type software. I'll just go ahead and harden those edges and then remove the crease. The reason we're adding a few more divisions is because of that cut in on the side. And without them, I feel like we're going to get some weird pinching, which I don't really want to get. So to create that cut in, we're going to go ahead and create one edge with a multi-cut tool. We're then going to bevel that to get our shape, and we want it to be something like this. And these come up pretty far, so we'll go ahead and select all the edges to begin with, and then I'm just going to come to the top view, and then maybe we'll just deselect, same amount on either side, something like this. Oh, make sure that's even, sorry. Kind of confusing myself here. Okay, there we go, that's even on both sides. I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, okay, there we go. That's even on both sides. Always good to double check before you start doing anything. And then probably a gap of about that big. We'll then go ahead and extrude, and we actually want these to come in all the way through and meet in the middle. I'm then going to go ahead and delete those faces because we want this to be a gap. I'll just go ahead, edit mesh, and then merge, because otherwise these vertices in here would be disconnected, but we want those to be connected. And the topology in there is okay now. So that's the basic shape. We now need to have some bevels here to hold that shape. So just using the multi-cut tool, I'm going to go ahead and add in a few lines just to hold those edges. Something like that. Okay, and then on the inside, we will go ahead, select those edges, and then we will extrude in just with offset. Some of the edge pulling away here, but I'm not too worried about that. And there you go, that's the cutout. What we'll then do is go ahead and add some bevels to the rest of the sides here. Just to quickly select these. Make sure you deselect any edges we don't want to bevel. If you're wondering why sometimes I turn off chamfer and do segments, or turn on chamfer and do segments, and sometimes I turn it off, it's because if I want the roundness of these edges to be more of a feature of the mesh, then I'll turn chamfer off, right, and just have segments on, like with the dead eyes, right? They're quite rounded. But if I want to have a sort of flatter surface, I generally find having chamfer turned off and just having fenced edges like this to work better. That's just a personal preference thing. No, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Okay, we could have an extra loop going this way, but I don't feel like we need to really. And then that is that shape. There is one more thing we need to add in the middle, and that is a cylinder for the ropes to actually go around, because this is a pulley. I don't know exactly how the mechanism works, but all we're really worried about is how it looks, and does it look correct, because a lot of the time in VFX and any pre-rendered stuff, if it's not for like some sort of engineering model or something, we don't actually care if it could physically work or not. You just want to make it look as accurate as possible, right? In doing so, it could potentially physically work if you could somehow extract that model into the real world, but for a lot of interior detail stuff like this, we don't really have to worry about it too much. So that is our shape there. We'll go ahead and add some bevels to these edges. Like so. I'll just go ahead and smooth both of these edges. Okay, and then that's in the middle, and then that is our pulley shape. Very, very, very simple to and easy to make. We'll just group these together and call this something like pulley underscore 001, and then is pulley spelled with an I, E, or a Y? Oh, no, my bad. It's spelled with a Y. I did actually just have to go and Google that. Let's now go ahead and make the double and triple versions. So we'll duplicate this, bring that to the side. We'll, for the time being, just hide our interior bit. What we're going to do is, this part is actually pretty simple. All we're going to do is duplicate this. Okay. Delete the caps on either side. I'm going to take it up to where the bevel is. Okay, well, I'm just going to duplicate this. And we want this to have a similar size gap. Okay, in sort of in between each section. So this gap should be pretty equal to this gap. Something like this. Okay, then we'll just go ahead and get that to line up to there. And then we'll delete these overlapping faces. There you go. That gives us our double one. Okay, I'm just going to duplicate these out for later. I'll go ahead and combine that. Edit mesh and then merge. We can then go ahead and duplicate this again. I'll just isolate these two. Now, what we're interested in is just the caps. Okay, so a lot of the times you don't actually need to remake things from scratch. That's something I see a lot of beginners doing, is you can take parts you've already made and break them up and use them to make new parts that are slightly different. So you see in just like barely a minute, I wasn't exactly keeping track, we've gone ahead and turned that into a double one, just using the same ones we already had, and the topology is still clean and consistent. We can then use this exact same approach, if I isolate this, to go ahead and create our triple version. So if I go ahead and duplicate this, we're going to invert it. Okay, set the pivot point to this edge, snap it to there, combine, and then again all we have to do is add our caps. So we'll duplicate this again. Okay, delete the parts we don't need. Oh, bit too much. Like so. Then again, we're just going to snap to the edges. Combine, and then edit, and then merge. And then we have our triple. So you can see in a very, very short amount of time, we created one shape, and then use that shape to create the triple version and the double version. And then literally all we have to do is we'll just take these two guys out on their own. Okay, we'll duplicate this part. We'll set the pivot point just to there. Turn on wireframe on shaded, and then that will let us just snap this to where we need it to go. Okay, then what I like to do is to actually go ahead and combine these. Any part that's going to share the same material, a little piece like this, you're just better off combining it. I would probably go ahead and even just combine these entirely. Okay, and there you go. That's the extra parts of our rigging. And then that's really, as far as like little mechanics and mechanisms go, that's really all you need. There is a lot of complicated stuff when it comes to doing the actual rigging parts. Okay, like these various different ropes and bits and pieces. I, at one point, tried to make these all as actual rope, so I created like threads and then like kind of used the twist tool to make those look like they were combined into a single piece, like rope, like this, how it kind of crisscrosses. It became far too much, right, because there's miles and miles and miles of rigging on ships, and how much rigging you want to do is really up to you. You could do like a simple amount. I mean, this isn't simple, it's quite a lot, but you could do a lesser amount like this, and that's fit for purpose. That already looks great. You could do it like more accurately, where there's so many lines, right? You can look at this for ages, and you'll keep seeing lines and lines and lines, and you can spend a very, very long time doing it. I've certainly done that before. I personally wouldn't recommend it unless you're trying to create like as accurate as possible model. Like, just look at this, right? This is with a lot more rigging. You can see our pulleys and various different things in there. Our dead eyes here down at the bottom. I would say if you want to do it, go for it. If not, don't worry, just do a lesser amount. It will still look just as cool. Now that we combine these all, actually, we don't really need these in groups anymore. We'll go ahead and just name these pulley 001, or maybe pulley single underscore 001. It's always good to have a pretty consistent naming scheme whenever you're doing stuff like this. Because once you have 100 of these guys, if you do, it's going to be quite annoying to find where each one goes. We'll just turn on our reference layer. And again, we can take our pulleys, probably match these up. Okay, this guy will probably just be a single one, and I only know that just from experience from making these before. And then we know that's roughly going to be about that size. This one up here, probably a double, and so on. But you see how we can just make these very, very quickly and then just scale them down to fit the reference. So now we know that's actually the correct size. I'll just go ahead and scale down all of these to the same size. You'll probably get some which are slightly bigger, depending on where they are on the ship. But again, that's just something you're going to have to look at your reference for. And then, yeah, that's kind of really all the rigging components you need. Something else I'll show you, a little trick that helped me a lot when I was creating ropes, because you might think that you need to, oh god, I need to like create a cylinder and then take it up here and then scale it down and extrude it this way, and then like, do I have to start rotating it and moving the vertices around? God no. Please don't do that. Don't do that at all. There's a much faster way to do this. Let's say, right, we put some of our rigging parts, we take them and then put them up where they need to go on the decks. Okay, like if we turn our reference, you can see here we have a few dead eyes here. So just for example, let's take one, rotate it to look in the correct direction, and then just put one here, right? Now for the time being, it's not actually attached to anything. There are little boards that come out here, you can see in reference, and they'll sort of connect down there. But let's just say for the sake of this example, right, that's where the dead eye goes. Okay, and let's say you wanted to connect it up to the top here, which is where it goes. Okay. Also, just as a side, I wouldn't worry about where to terminate the ropes up here. I would kind of just hide it. There's various different bits of wood. Like if we look from the side again, you can see here there's a part that comes down, and there's sort of a gap here for where the masts go through this platform. Just hide them in the creases. They kind of curve in like this, right, and come up towards the top. So don't worry so much about that. And by the time you've added all the rigging, you honestly, you wouldn't notice. Unless you're planning on getting really close, you can sort of try and tie it together if you want. But anytime you see a ship that is CG in 3D, I guarantee you none of those ropes are actually connected to a point where they would be realistically. They kind of just look the part. Nobody's got time for that, especially not in VFX. So you kind of just have to make it look correct. Okay, and then let's say we want to run a rope from this deadeye up to this point. Best way to do that is select both of the objects you want to use, duplicate them with Control D, and then combine. Okay, I'm just going to take that out of the ship group, and I'm just going to name it, just so we know what it is, guide, because we don't want that to get lost, right? And it is overlapping with some of the geo. What we're then going to do is make this a live surface. I think we used that in one of the previous episodes, but it's been a while. We're then going to select the curve EP curve tool under curves, and then because this is now live, we can now attach our curve points to the bits of the geo. It might not always go exactly where you want it to go, sorry, but then we can now turn off the control, and then if we just turn up our soft select, we can then go ahead and just get that into place like so, and you see just like that we've now added a rope between them. Something you can do actually that would help even better is just under curve degree change that to 1 if you double click it instead of cubic, because then it will literally go from point to point, right? Any curve where you just want it to go, it's like taut, right? It's just stretched and going in a straight line. Change it to 1 linear. In fact, we'll even redo that now, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So if I double click it, go to 1 linear. Okay, turn on our guide again, add our first point, add our second. Okay, you can now see there's only 2 control points, so now this acts as kind of like a very taut, tight rope, and goes directly between those 2 points. Okay, sometimes it is handy to have 3 or even more, or as a Bezier curve, for the more curved ones, because they do have those, but a lot of them are quite tight ropes like this. Okay, next thing what we'll do is we'll get a cylinder. Okay, we'll rotate it so it's sitting flat like this. We're then going to kind of scale it down and just bring it up to where the deadeye is. Okay, and we're going to reduce the subdivision axes to 8 because this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of ropes. You don't want the polygon count to be too high. And we're going to scale that down till that kind of matches the thickness of our rope. We can actually even check it against our reference. Something like that. Okay. Then we will isolate that and take that back to the grid center. I'm then just going to extrude it a little. Okay, and then just going to delete both those faces on the other side, because we don't want those. And then soften the edges. Okay, make sure that the transforms are all frozen, all the history is deleted on it. We're then going to go ahead, select our curve, or select our cylinder, sorry, then select our curve. We're going to come up to deform, and then curve warp. Okay, that's now attached our cylinder to the curve. Okay, but it's not going all the way. So in order to fix that, we're just going to come up to the attribute editor under curve warp, and then we're going to untick keep length, and you can see that's now extended the cylinder all the way to the top, right? And instead of us now having to get a cylinder in there and then rotate it, we very quickly, and it's taken me a bit longer because I was having to explain it, attach the curve to the deadeye and then up to the rigging up here, and then yeah, it does just kind of intersect here, but we're then going to have a piece of wood that comes underneath here, like in the reference, right? You can see this board here, and that will go in front of this. It doesn't look like it is in this image. That's just because this is like a cutaway, right? But there should be two here, one here, and then so one running here, one running that side as well. And that is literally how you can create all of the rigging for your ship, and you can do this really, really quickly. What I would recommend is taking your rigging parts and then literally going in and kind of copy and pasting them, or just duplicating them, and then placing them in the right place along your ship. And this bit can take a very long time because there's quite a lot to add, and I would really take your time doing this, and I'd really study your reference. A simple side image like this isn't quite going to cut it. You're going to need more reference as well. Again, like I've mentioned in the past, Pinterest, fantastic place, or just good old Google Images is a great place to get reference for this stuff. I wouldn't use AI imagery just because sometimes it's not going to be accurate most of the time, actually, especially for stuff like this. It would just kind of get the essence but not the content. And once you have all those in place, you can then go through, combine literally all of it. Make sure you duplicate it first, right? You don't want to combine everything. You can combine some parts, it's kind of up to you. And then you can call that a guide, turn on live surface, and then just like how we did, create all your curves. Then literally all you need to do is create a cylinder, duplicate it every time you want to do a curve warp deformer, and then you can just go bang, 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 and then do the rest of your rigging very, very, very quickly. And then when we actually come to adding textures to stuff like this, we're going to do it all procedurally anyway, so you really don't have to worry about the UVs, and it just saves yourself so much time. So please don't try and do that manually. Use curves. They'll save yourself so much time and headache, believe me. So that's going to be it, really, for the modeling. I am going to take my ship up to kind of a similar level, hopefully, for the next episode, and then we're going to take a look at the texturing. We did have someone, I don't know if I mentioned this already, ask if we're going to split up the deck into individual planks, and we'll probably make a video on how to do that too. It's quite a simple process. Probably works how you'd expect, right? Just multi-cut tool, straight lines across, separate them, extrude. Maybe add some breakup, so some planks are shorter than others, stuff like that. Anyway, next episode we're going to get into actual texturing, where we can add our like plank lines along the hull using texture maps rather than actually modeling them in ourselves. That is something you can do as well, but for this we're not going to, and I would not recommend doing it again unless you're really going for that very, very high fidelity, like very close up model type hero product type thing. But yeah, this will give you everything you need to do the rigging, and I hope that helped. If you had any questions at all, please do let us know. Always happy to answer any questions. Send us an email, comment under the video, whatever that may be. We can make a video or just reply and hopefully get that sorted for you. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial so far, and I'll see you in the next part to do the texturing. Thanks.